Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parshas Korach, Tavshin Pei Gimel. We will start from the beginning. Perktas Zayin, Pasuk Aleph, chapter 16, verse 1. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kas ben Levi. And Korach, the son of Yitzhar, the son of Akat, son of Levi, took the Dasan of Aviram b'nei Eliav, and Dasan of Aviram, the children of Eliav, Va'in ben Pelas b'nei Reuven, Ren ben Pelas, the son of Reuven. So the Torah, when it tells us Korach made his dispute, it gives us his whole lineage until Levi. Now, there's one person missing, right? We go to his father, we go to his father, grandfather, great-grandfather, and who's missing? Yaakov, right? It doesn't say Ben Levi ben Yaakov. And the same way we know Kahas, the son of Levi, and the Torah still tells us Ben Levi. Why didn't the Torah tell us Ben Yaakov, the son of Yaakov? Why didn't it go all the way? So Rashi brings this question, and the answer really is based on something that we had way back in Parshas Vayechi. If you look back in Parshas Vayechi, where Yaakov blesses his children before they die, when he gets to his children of Shimon and Levi, actually the first three children do not receive what is directly a blessing. This is in Drasha. So it says like this, when he addresses Shimon and Levi together, it says, Shimon and Levi achim, Shimon and Levi are brothers, their weaponry is a stolen craft. In their conspiracy, may my soul not come. When they congregate, my honor shall not rest there. So what is Yaakov referring to when he says, beside them in the conspiracy, my soul shall not come? So the answer is that what Yaakov was saying is that there will be times that Levi and Shimon also will congregate together for things that are not good. And when that happens, I don't want my name mentioned there. So that's what Rashi says. V'lehiskar ben Yaakov. There's no mention of the fact of the son of Yaakov. It's Yaakov asked for mercy on himself, that his name not be mentioned by their dispute. Shenemar, as it says, when they congregate, when they gather, my honor shall not rest there. Okay, so therefore, that was his request, and that request was granted. To hear when it goes through all the names, Yaakov is not mentioned. Then Rashi says, where do we find that Yaakov's name is mentioned in regard to Korach? That is, in one of the books of Tanakh called Divrei Hayamim, where it goes through the Leviim and their job of being on the duchen, of singing the song, of singing when the sacrifices were brought. And there we're going through the lineage of those that were part of that. There it says, there Yaakov's name is mentioned. Shenemar, as it says, Ben Abi Asaf, Ben Korach, Ben Yitzhar, Ben Kas, Ben Levi, Ben Yisrael. There, Korach's descendants are mentioned, and where it's mentioned for this positive thing, it says Ben Yisrael. Yaakov's name is mentioned. Now, just as a quick aside, Korach, although he died, his sons did not die. That's a pasuk in Chumash later on. Korach's sons, before they were swallowed up in the earth, before they were swallowed up, they did tshuva, they repented, they realized they were wrong, and they went down, it says, but they came back up. They went down, they were swallowed up, and they were punished for what they did, but they came back up and continued to live lives. And Rashi actually tells us this was part of Korach's mistake. Korach saw that he was going to have descendants later on, and that can only mean he's going to survive. The problem is, as Rashi says, his mistake is that he thought it was going on him, and it wasn't. It was going on his children. But okay, so Rashi tells us here, by Korach's dispute, Yaakov requested his name not be mentioned, and it wasn't. Later on, when Korach's descendants are mentioned for praise, that is where his name is mentioned. Okay, so the obvious question is that even if Yaakov's name isn't mentioned, we know it's Yaakov's great-grandson. We know that. We know who the people are involved. So what exactly are we gaining by not having his name there? So the answer that's given is actually based on something later on that we find, and this is in Parshas Pinchas, and that we can turn to. Okay. Okay, this is Perek Chav Zayin in Bamidbar. You can turn to it if you want. Chapter 27, verse 1. Later on.
The next one.
Chapter 27 in Bamidbar.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's a mention that the Parsha talks about there in Parshas Pinchas about the division of the land of Eretz Yisrael. And Perek Chav Zayin, chapter 27, Pasuk Aleph says, Vatikrav the b'nai Slavchad, the daughters of a man named Slavchad approached. Slavchad was Ben Chefer, the son of Chefer, Ben Gilad, the son of Gilad, Ben Macher, the son of Macher, Ben Menashe, the son of Menashe, Lemishbechais Menashe, of the families of the tribe of Menashe, Ben Yosef, the son of Yosef. So here also we have a whole lineage of the daughter, that these were the daughters of Slavchad, and then it mentions whole lineage back to Yosef. So Rashi comments, why is the Torah doing that whole line of lineage here? The answer is because the Torah is trying to teach us, Lamanema, Rashi says, to teach you, Yosef chibev es haaretz. Yosef cherished the land of Israel. Shenemar, as it says, Alisam etzas Moisai. Yosef made the before he died, he made the Jewish people swear when they leave Egypt, they're going to take his remains to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. That was Yosef's expression of love of Eretz Yisrael. And so too, his great-granddaughters also showed how they cherished the land. As they said, give us a piece of land. Their father Slavchad had died. There were no sons in the family, just daughters. So based on what was going to be happening, the piece of land that Slavchad would have been taking when the Jewish people divide up the land, it's not going to go to his direct family. It's going to go somewhere else in the tribe of Menashe. So his daughters were now saying, why should that happen? Why should it come out that the name of our father is going to be it's going to be forgotten? His land is not going to stay in his family. It's going to go to relatives, but not his direct family. Then, because he has no son, give us the portion of land, they say. So Rashi says that when they're doing this, that the Torah is testifying they didn't just do this because, they want a piece of land. They want to own a piece of land. Land is value. That's not what it was about. It was about the fact that we're following the footsteps of their great-grandfather Yosef. Yosef showed his love for the land of Eretz Yisrael, and when they were coming and asking for the land, they were doing the same thing. It was the same motivation. It was the love of the land of Eretz Yisrael. As a matter of fact, the Medrash says that even though the Torah doesn't say it straight out, this was a time of discontent amongst the Jewish people. The Jewish people were not happy in the desert. They were complaining. They wanted to go back to land. They wanted to go back to Mitzrayim. And it was at this time itself that these young women came and said, we want a piece of land. And they were that was because they were showing that it didn't make a difference to them what everybody else was saying about Eretz Yisrael. They wanted the piece of land. Why? Again, not because of real estate, but because they were following the footsteps of their great-grandfather Yosef, and that's why Yosef's name is mentioned here. So if we follow this pattern, that would mean that if we have this whole lineage by Korach going back to Yaakov, that would mean that Yaakov has is playing some kind of a role here. The same way over there by Yosef. Yosef is playing a role because the love of Eretz Yisrael was continuing in his family. They were following in Yosef's footsteps. Yosef plays a role in what's happening by these women. If it mentions Yaakov here by Korach, that means that Yaakov has played a role in this. Yaakov has some kind of connection to what Korach is doing. And therefore, Yaakov didn't want his name here because he didn't want that it should appear that he had some kind of connection to what's going on, that he was some kind of a cause, some kind of an influence to Korach's rebellion. Therefore, we know Yaakov is the great-grandfather here, but by not mentioning it, the point is that that means that the Torah is testifying that Yaakov did not have any kind of influence or role, or it could be any kind of cause to what Korach did. Okay, but the thing is that if that is what we're saying, the explanation is, then we have a problem, because we have Levi, right? It says the son of Levi. Levi is mentioned in the lineage, and according to what we're saying, that would mean that Levi, if he's mentioned in the lineage, did have some kind of part in what happened here. Because if the whole reason Yaakov isn't mentioned is in order that it should be in order to show that Yaakov played no role, had no influence in this, if Levi's mentioned, that means Levi did have some kind of influence in this. And that's interesting, because Levi, from the 12 tribes, very righteous individual, one of the 12 tribes of the Jewish people. That seems very interesting. It seems very, what is there a way of explaining, how Levi played a role in this? So, Rabbi the Bakshal of the Mir Yishuv Yerushalayim suggested the following. And for this, we got to go back to Bereshis. We got to go back to what we read before, when Yaakov addressed his two sons, Shimon and Levi. So when Yaakov actually rebukes Shimon and Levi for in this blessing, doesn't directly bless them, he actually rebukes them. So he rebukes them for two things. Number one, for the fact that they were the ones who were the instigators of selling Yosef, and also the fact that when their sister Dinah was kidnapped, they went and they killed out the whole city, which, although commentaries say they deserved to be killed, but Yaakov was not pleased with what they did. It could cause other problems. And Yaakov talks about their anger. But Yaakov also says something else. Let's read it again. This is again in Bereshis, Memtes 49, Pasuk verse 5. Shimon and Levi Achim. Shimon and Levi are brothers. Klei chamas mecheresehem. Their weaponry are a stolen craft. Their weapons are considered a stolen craft. They stole it from someone. Doing that, what they did with weapons, is not considered their thing. They stole it from someone. And I'll tell you what Rashi says about that soon. And then he says, Besaidam, al tavai nafshi, bekolam al teichad kavedi. When they come together, my honor shouldn't be mentioned there. Ki ba'apram hargu ish, for in their anger they killed a man. And they wanted to uproot the ox. So clearly there is a mention, and again, Ora apam kiyaz rasam kikashasa, cursed be their wrath, and because it's strong, and their anger because it is difficult. Achal can be Yaakov, Yitzim be Yisrael. I shall divide them amongst Yaakov and spread them amongst Israel. So Yaakov is clearly talking about their anger. But he also talks about Klei Chamas Mechereseyem. Their weaponry is a stolen craft. Rashi explains, what does it mean? Their weaponry is a stolen craft. Okay. Rashi explains. Klei Chamas. Okay. Klei Chamas means stolen craft. The Klei Chamas Chereseyem, right. Klei Chamas Mechereseyem. Their weaponry is a stolen craft. Nezu shal Retzicha. This craft, what you did now of killing these people, Chamasu biyadchem. It's stolen. It's not yours. This is from the blessing of Esav. This is his craft. And you stole it from him. Yitzchak said to Esav, you shall live by your sword. The sword is the craft of Esav. Yaakov says to Shimon and Levi, by killing Shechem, you went ahead and you used Ritzicha, you used killing, and that's not yours. That's not your craft. That's not how you do things. That is the way Esav does things. You have stolen his craft. That's not your craft. That's his craft, and you have stolen it from him. So Yaakov is rebuking Shimon and Levi for kind of not appreciating who they are and what their craft is, and they go out and they start using Esav's craft. It would seem that Yaakov is saying that they responded, they were angry, and their response to their anger, and the response that came from their anger was a stolen craft. Ritzicha, killing, is not meant for the Bnei Yisrael, for the children of Israel. That is Esav's craft. And the fact that you used it means that you took his craft. So the rebuke, Rebbe Levovitz points out that the rebuke of Yaakov to Shimon and Levi is that why are you looking outside of what you're meant to be? You are not meant to be people who use the sword. So why now? Why did you go ahead and look outside of what you are and take from Esav what he does? A person has to appreciate who they are and what they are and what they have been given and who they are, what they're meant to be, and not go looking at others and taking from them what is theirs, what's not meant. You don't need to go ahead and judge and take from others. Appreciate that. You can learn from others, but at the same time, you should be appreciating yourself and appreciating what your mission is and what you have to do, and not have to go outside of that and go to somebody else and take from them. This was the rebuke of Yaakov to Shimon and Levi. You went ahead, you saw what Esav has, you took from him instead of following what your mission is, what your lot is, and if that is where that we can now we can make a connection between Levi and Korach. If Levi is not jealous, it's not a question of jealousy. But if Levi is not appreciating what he has, not appreciating what his mission is, not appreciating what Hashem wants him to do, that he needs to go and now take from somebody else what they're given to do. So that starts by Levi at one level, but that continues on until eventually by his grandson. His grandson suffers from the same thing, but takes it a step further. Korach also, we can say, why was he jealous of Aaron and Moshe and Aaron? Why was he jealous? So typically we look at jealousy as you see something that somebody has, you want it, and therefore you're jealous, you want it. And why does he have it? Why don't I have it? I should have it too. You can start from a different angle. If a person doesn't appreciate himself, if a person doesn't have that value of himself, then he looks other places to fill that gap, to fill that void. A person who is satisfied with who they are and what they are doesn't become jealous of other people. And again, it doesn't mean that we don't strive to emulate from others. We see others do things and we emulate it. But it doesn't come from the fact that we're just trying to fill a void in ourselves by now trying to be somebody else. We have to, if a person appreciates who they are, they have that self-worth, then what other person has or what a person is, that doesn't affect them because they're not missing anything. If they're not missing anything, there's no void. You don't have to fill it with what other people have. By Levi having this trait that he didn't appreciate what he was and what he had, and because of that, he went out and took from Esav. Why did he take from Esav? Yaakov is saying you didn't have enough appreciation of who you are and what you're meant to be. That's why you took the craft of Esav. That's the starting point that eventually came out in Korach. Korach also was a person that was lacking that kind of appreciation of himself. That therefore, because he had that void, he had to now fill it with something else. He had to fill it with something that he saw as bigger. Something that at a certain level was bigger, but because he wasn't satisfied with himself, therefore he needed more. So what started by Levi at a certain level continued on through the generations, may have been dormant, but eventually it came out in his great grandson Korach, who also was suffering from this trait on maybe on a more intense level than Levi, to the point that he led a dispute to go ahead and take something that wasn't his to fill that void of his. So it comes out that according to this, the lesson typically, the lesson of Korach, we say, is jealousy, which is true. But the question is, what's the root of jealousy? The root of jealousy is just because, again, the root of jealousy can be that, I'm missing something. I see something I don't have and I want it. And there again, if you appreciate what Hashem has given you, you don't become jealous. But it could be even a more deeper flaw or a deeper issue, an issue of not appreciating yourself, not just about I don't have this. It's about not appreciating who you are. You don't value yourself enough. And because you don't value yourself enough, you have to fill that void with what somebody else has that seems to be the bigger thing that will make you feel important now. that is what can lead to jealousy. And that was the seed that started in Levi and eventually came out in Korach in a much more severe way. Now, Rav Akshel points out also that once we're talking about this idea of having self-worth, so clearly Korach was lacking that self-esteem, that self-worth. It led him to jealousy, it led him to a dispute. Another source of dispute can be when somebody insults you. Somebody does something to you, somebody says something to you, you're very hurt by it, and because of that, you don't want to have anything to do with the person. And once you don't have anything to do with the person, then that already can lead to disputes and terrible consequences. So Rav Akshel points out that, and again, if a person has enough self-value, if they value themselves enough, then when somebody insults them, it doesn't really get to them. I mean, every human being reacts. The question is, how are you going to react? How much is it going to affect you? If you have that self-esteem, if you value yourself in the proper way, then what somebody else says to you doesn't matter. Who cares what he says? I know what I am. And again, I mean, look, if I have to correct something, I have to correct something. But if the point is being insulted to what he said, if I have that proper self-esteem, if I have that self-value, then I'm not going to be so insulted, so hurt, that therefore that can now come to a point of a dispute. So this idea of the connection between having the proper self-esteem and the possibility of disputes, again, it can, depending on which, if it's jealousy that's going to dispute, if I have self-value, I'm not going to be jealous. What's going to dispute is the fact the person insulted me or said something wrong to me. If I have the proper self-value, it's not going to bother me that much. So Korach has a very important lesson of having the proper self-esteem and value for who we are. It doesn't mean that we don't try to perfect to improve. It doesn't mean that we ignore our flaws. But at the same time, we don't judge ourselves by others because of the fact that we feel that we're missing something. We feel that we don't have value. We're not good enough. There's something missing in us. A person has to know that Hashem gives them their talents and their capabilities and their mission in life, and they should appreciate it. They should value it. And the fact that somebody else is doing something else doesn't play any role or have an effect on him. A person, though, who feels that void that comes from a lack of self-value, that's the person who's going to be looking outside of himself, seeing what other people have, and to try to fill that void based on how he sees what he sees on other people. I just want to also, because I have a little bit more time, I just want to a short thought about again on Kinna. There is a Yiddish saying that goes, in English, the Yiddish saying goes, no one knows whose shoes are hurting them. Meaning, a lot of times we look at other people and we say, look how good they have it. Look how good they have it. I have all my problems. I have all my headaches. I have all my issues. And that person doesn't have it. And because of that, you're jealous. But it's because of the fact that you look at yourself as I'm having problems and he's fine. And the Yiddish saying goes that you don't know if his shoes are hurting him. He can be walking around fine, looking good. He's got these fancy Ferragamo shoes, very fancy, very nice, but they could be killing him. And he's not telling anybody. You don't know, no way. Another saying goes, nobody knows what's going on in somebody else's pot. Everything on the outside could look good, but nobody knows what's really going on. So when a person goes ahead and sees his problems and he looks at somebody else and he says, oh, how come he doesn't have any problems? And that creates jealousy. The saying, the very logical or a very practical lesson idea to keep in mind is that you have no idea what's going on by somebody else. I'm going to share with you a little Chassidic Shemaisa, little Chassidic story that brings this out. And that is, okay, the story goes like this. There was a city, Kabrin, and there was a famous Chassidic Rebbe there, Moshe of Kabrin. Okay, you got it. So the story goes, when a major road was being built near Kabrin, an elderly Jew from a distant town came to work on its construction. From Rosh Hashanah to Sukkot, he came to Moshe of Kabrin's synagogue to pray. When he was ready to take leave of the Rebbe, it was a very cold day, and he thought to himself, the Rebbe is fortunate. He's able to stay in a warm house with plenty of food. I have to work outside in the rain and cold. It's good to be a Rebbe. He can stay inside. He has plenty, but everything is comfortable and good. And I have to schlep and work outside. As the man was deep in his envious thoughts, a distraught mother came in hysterically crying, my son is desperately ill. Help me. The woman's tears affected everyone present. The Rebbe felt her pain more vividly than the others. The man then realized that the Rebbe of Kabrin suffered much more than he did. A Rebbe feels the pain of his followers, and he feels it more than everybody else. So the man was saying, he has it easy. No, he doesn't have it easy. A Rebbe doesn't have it easy because the Rebbe feels the pain more than anybody else for others. So again, you make assumption, everything's good there. You have no idea what's going on. Have a wonderful Shabbos.